WHOW Morning Show. I'm your host today, Ben Hubbard. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in studio in this segment, one of my favorite guests, I've got to say, Joey Long with the DeWitt County Museum and C.H. Moore Homestead. Joey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great after that little introduction. Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate you coming in and taking time for me today. You guys have, as we were catching up, you guys haven't been too busy during the off season. Still busy, of course, but hopefully you've enjoyed what's a little bit of a break maybe compared to years past.
Yeah, so last year, you remembered, we had the big floor project going on January, February, March. So that was quite an upheaval, quite a thing, but also quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
So nothing quite that big this year. Fixing some wallpaper that was falling down and other little things like that need to happen. But yeah, no huge projects. Knock on wood.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Well, we're a little past due, but I guess it's about time we wish Mr. Lincoln a happy belated birthday this month. That was February 12th. And of course, we'd be remiss to talk about Central Illinois history without bringing up Mr. Lincoln. Let's talk about Abraham Lincoln and his connection to the homestead as we celebrate him this month.
Yeah, I think that this is the perfect month to bring that up. And I would want to start out saying that while the C.H. Moore Homestead DeWitt County Museum is not a Lincoln site,
sure,
it is certainly a Lincoln related site,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So while I cannot say that Lincoln ever visited the home, which we do often, have that question. People ask if he'd ever spent time there in that house, knowing that there's a connection between Moore and Lincoln. But the house wasn't built until the 1870s.
Yeah.
So, I let them know Abraham Lincoln was in heaven, when this house was built. But then I'll tell them a little bit about, time that he spent in Mr. Moore's previous residence.
Yeah.
And there is, documented, it's documented
records
that he often was a guest in the home.
Sure.
There's some stories about that. So while it's not a Lincoln site, we do have many, like Lincoln connections, Lincoln related artifacts and objects.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, the story. So there are also the things that are not necessarily tangible,
mm-hmm.
But just as inspiring and interesting.
Yeah.
So, as far as the connections between C.H. Moore and Abraham Lincoln,
mm-hmm.
We knew that he was his law partner, political supporter, personal friend.
Yeah.
But over the years, I've been able to find more connections that really solidify that and maybe show you that perhaps that personal friendship was a little deeper
really
than what would have been thought before, or that the ties, were tighter. And I've also found evidence that the connection between Lincoln and Moore, sometimes people, they come into your life and then, that friendship, fades as that
sure.
person moves on. But not the case with C.H. Moore and Abraham Lincoln. So we know that Moore knew Lincoln at least by 1841,
mm-hmm.
when Moore arrived here in DeWitt County and set up as our first resident lawyer here in the county. But we also know that Moore was responsible for each year paying the taxes on a piece of land that Lincoln owned in Iowa.
Really?
And so every year Moore would send a receipt and a letter to Lincoln letting him know the taxes were this much, it was paid on this date, and here's your receipt.
Mm-hmm.
And that letter continued on to Lincoln every year throughout Lincoln's life, whether the address was Springfield, Illinois or Washington, D.C. So that shows that it lasted a long time.
Yeah.
I think one of the more personal or closer ties that I discovered is that Mary Lincoln, like other Victorian ladies, she would collect up photographs of friends and family and tuck them into her little velvet photo album.
Mm-hmm.
And so it turns out, I discovered this a few years ago, that there were actually, in that photo album, there were actually 2 photographs of C.H. Moore in the private family photo album,
Wow.
as well as 2 photographs of C.H. Moore's son-in-law, Vespasian Warner.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, when I first saw something tipping me off to this, I thought, no, now that can't be right. That's too good.
Yeah.
And, so I checked on it, and sure enough, there were. And I also, I was kind of curious about this. And so I actually called Harold Holzer. He's a nationally known Lincoln historian.
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind enough to, pick up the phone, and I told him who I was and where I was calling from, and, that I had this question, and he was very kind in answering it. Now, Mr. Holzer literally wrote the book on the Lincoln family album. I have a copy of that at the museum. So he was able to shed some light on that. And apparently, it was known about Mary that if you upset her in any way, your picture was out.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I one time giving a tour, I said something about that, and they said, well, that's like Facebook now. And I was like, I guess that would be the equivalent back in the day. But so obviously we did not upset the woman in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the photos of C.H. Moore, it looks to me that he was probably old enough in that image that probably someone else in the family took up, still had connections, and slipped that photo into the album. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But a lot of personal, connections there. And then as far as, like objects and artifacts, we have several Lincoln chairs in our collection. In fact, a couple of times when I've had group tours, I've done a presentation focusing on those Lincoln chairs.
Yeah.
Where do they come from? Well, these are chairs that came to the museum, passed down in different ways. They all have a neat story, their journey of how they ended up with us. And
I don't know why I was thinking like the big chair at the Lincoln Monument that he sits in.
We don't have that one. We'd have to build a big building for that, but we do have several others. So, but one of the greatest ones is a chair that came to us. There was a gentleman who did not know where he was calling. He just knew he's calling the DeWitt County Museum in Clinton, Illinois. Mm-hmm. He was in his 90s. He lived in Michigan or Minnesota and wanted to know if we would like to have his family's Lincoln chair. And of course, you have to ask some questions. Where did you get the chair? What's the problem?
Yeah.
And so he told me that the chair belonged to his great aunt, who worked for a very wealthy family in Clinton, Illinois, who had ties with Lincoln, and Lincoln often was a guest in their home.
Wow.
When Lincoln did visit their home, this was the chair that Lincoln always sat in. Okay, so then the next question would be, do you remember the name? Do you know the name of the family who owned the chair? The family that your aunt worked for? And I take it that the aunt was the maid, and she was just so taken with the idea, that Lincoln sat in this chair, that eventually the family gifted the chair to her, and it was passed down through his family. So now he's offering it to us. So, no, he could not remember the name of the family for whom the aunt worked. Well, now it's just a chair. I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
But then he piped up and he said, but I can tell you where the family lived. I know where the house was. Okay, we're back on track.
There we go.
I can do some research and maybe I can figure out if this is feasible, right? Yeah. So he told me, I'm in my 90s and I have not been to Clinton, Illinois since I was 14 years old, but I remember this like I remember my name. If you were in Clinton, Illinois, and you wanted to go to Bloomington, Illinois, you'd have to go north. Okay, so he's remembering that correctly. And this is before 51 went around town. Through. And he said, at the north edge of Clinton, there's a 4-way intersection. He said, and to the west, which would be left, was the cemetery. And then to the right, he said, that's where the house was. And I thought, oh my gosh.
I think I know that intersection.
Know where he was calling, right? He's just calling the museum.
Yeah.
And so I tested him and I said, well, would it have been a brick house? Oh, no. This was a large clapboard sided house, and it would have been the northeast quadrant of that intersection. And the house was set quite a way back. And I said to him, okay, so that's this house, and we're going to need that chair.
Oh my gosh. Joey, you're blowing my mind right now.
But all these chairs have a great story of how they got to us. So that's something maybe people don't think about.
Yeah.
And then we have other objects like we have Judge McGraw's desk that Lincoln used and some other things that are connected to him. But then it's also the stories, the stories of the connections between C.H. Moore and Abraham Lincoln, but also, all the people of DeWitt County. Lincoln was a familiar face here. He was walking our streets and dining with people and staying in their taverns and in their homes and representing them, at the courthouse, for 20 years. So a lot of people remembered him. And what's unique too is the people of DeWitt County, they remembered Mr. Lincoln. They knew Mr. Lincoln.
Yeah.
And then before he went on to be President Lincoln.
Right. Yeah.
And if you want to envision that in your mind, they knew the Lincoln who didn't have a beard.
Whoa.
Right?
Yeah.
So, those people, of course, have saved the stories and whatnot. And we're fortunate that they did, that they've been passed down to us, and I can share those with people when they visit the museum.
Joey, I could sit here and listen to you tell these stories all day long, but I look at the clock. It's time for us to take a quick break. More to come with C.H. Moore Homestead and DeWitt County Museum Director Joey Long on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW. AgriTalk is the radio talk show for American agriculture. Hi, everybody. I'm Chip Flory, your host. We join you weekday mornings from 10 until 11 on WHOW, on AM and FM, and on the WHOW streams. We provide farmers and ranchers with timely insights and information aimed at improving their operations. Join me, Chip Flory, weekdays at 10:06 on Central Illinois Ag Station, WHOW.
Introducing this year's Instinct Next Gen and N-Serve nitrogen stabilizers, featuring the same leading active as always. And now announcing nothing new, because our performance still leads every competitor.
Our nitrogen stabilizers aren't new. They're proven with thousands of field trials and decades of experience leading the competition. No gimmicks, no empty promises. Now that deserves some hype.
Go to Corteva.us/hype to learn more.
It's time to celebrate winter. This is Scott Baum from Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton and Farmer City. Yes, we have extra savings on all new Chevrolets this month to celebrate the winter season. See our inventory of Chevrolet Trailblazers, Blazers, and the efficient Trax. We also have a good selection of our 7-passenger Chevrolet Traverse and Tahoes. Chevrolet, together, let's drive. See our winter celebration savings at BaumChevyBuick.com, right from the start.
Wellness starts with prevention. Book your annual appointment online today with SIU Center for Family Medicine in Lincoln by clicking their icon on DeWittDailyNews.com.
DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police blotter, weather forecast, and more with no paywall. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
It's the WHOW Morning Show. I'm your host today, Ben Hubbard. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. We continue with my guest in studio, Joey Long with the DeWitt County Museum and C.H. Moore Homestead. And Joey, as we're talking about Lincoln and the U.S. president, it's a big year this year, as we've been covering. It's America 250 this year, and you guys have a whole slew of events to celebrate. Let's jump into what's coming upcoming from the C.H. Moore Homestead.
They do. The events committee's been working very hard on this, and so we will have at least one event during the entire season that we're open. Every one of those events focusing on the history of the nation, but also then how those big stories of the history of the nation connect here to DeWitt County, which is a great theme. And so we were just talking about Lincoln. In May, we will be inviting my dear friend Guy Fraker back to the homestead. He did a wonderful presentation for us last year. He is a noted Lincoln scholar, has written a couple of scholarly books on Lincoln, and just a very entertaining way of presenting the facts and whatnot. So he's going to come on May 3rd, and that's a Sunday afternoon, and give a presentation on Abraham Lincoln and Lincoln's reverence for the Declaration of Independence. As he was talking to me about this concept that he came up with, it hadn't occurred to me. Lincoln did have a great reverence for our forefathers, the way that the way that the government was set up, and the spirit of the people and whatnot. And he even mentioned, we all know the lines from that famous Gettysburg speech, 7 years ago. That's drawing from that Declaration of Independence. So I think it'll be quite interesting. And I do expect a good crowd for that. We had nearly 100 people when he came before, people from not just here, but all around town. So we're really looking forward to that. And then do we have time for the second?
Well, just real quick, do you, what was the date for that, Guy
It's
Fraker?
going to be May 3rd, the afternoon of May 3rd at 1:30. And I want to also mention, it is, of course, it's a free presentation open to everyone. So please do come if you have a chance and spend an hour or two with us. I promise it'll be a great time.
Yeah. And before we jump into that event that we want to highlight, we still got a few minutes. And I just want to call back to, I know Guy Fraker was around last year, and her name is escaping me, but did that presentation on Lincoln's first love. And that sounded super interesting to me. And I just wanted to ask you about how that went with him.
It went great. And that's certainly, like a human interest thing.
Yeah,
not Lincoln the politician, not Lincoln the president, which I respect all of those things. Don't get me wrong. But aren't we all curious about Lincoln, the young man, right? And so he had, he's put a lot of thought into this, did a lot of research, has been out to visit her grave, and just put together a wonderful presentation on that topic. And I would expect this one to be just as fascinating.
Awesome.
And certainly fits under our umbrella of America 250 at the Homestead. All of these events that we have planned fall under that umbrella.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, Joey, looking at the calendar, we are about a month and a half away from the season open for the Homestead, and you guys are getting things right underway in April with an event for our musical friends. Let's dive into that.
Yes, this is so exciting. We have in Mr. Moore's music room at the mansion, we have Mr. Moore's Steinway piano. It hasn't played since nobody can remember when. It's just kind of been there for looks. It belongs there. It was an original piece of Moore furniture. So when many decades ago, when they were able to restore that room, when they're making it into a museum, they were able to go and get that original piano and bring it back to the room that it had always been in. The piano dates to the 1880s, which that lines up perfectly with when Moore was, had purchased that home and would have been furnishing it. And, but it has not played. And so a member of my board was able to find someone who is capable of restoring it back to the point that the piano can be played. I can't wait. It's like bringing the music back to life. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
So there will be an event scheduled toward the end of April, and everyone will be invited in to hear that piano music fill the air, bringing the piano back to life after all this time.
Yeah.
And it will also be kind of like a wine and cheese kind of thing.
Nice. And
we're really looking forward to that too.
So are you guys planning on that being like a 21 and up only event or anything like that?
I don't know the details.
Sure.
The committee hasn't given me all of those details.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's going to be, and if someone doesn't want wine, I do know we'll have I'm not going to be drinking wine.
Well, you'll be working, Joey.
Right. I'm on the clock. And so, we'll have tea and other things as well, but it'll be a really nice to, be opening, that month for the season, welcome people in the doors, and just enjoying bringing that music back to life and, talking with the other people that are there. And I think it's going to be really nice.
Yeah. Joey, this winter, I got the privilege of coming out to the homestead for the first time, thanks to a very generous holiday gift from you, giving us some free tickets. And something that I noticed, and it took me way too long to get out there, but something that I never knew is just how much you guys pack into that house from the outside. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a huge house. There's a lot of room, but you guys pack so much history, so many artifacts into that house. And I'm just curious, are there any little things or some artifacts that maybe go unnoticed at the homestead because you guys pack so much into it?
Yeah, we do have a lot.
Yeah.
When I was working on just cataloging just the kitchen alone, it was a gajillion items. I think about cataloging everything in your junk drawer in your kitchen and then multiply it by whatever because it's a museum. So yeah, it's a lot of things, and not everything is always out on display. It depends on the season or the setting of what they're trying to stage, or sometimes it's for the wellness of the artifact.
Sure.
You can't have a silk dress in the sun all year or whatnot. But so we do have some little hidden treasures. Sometimes when I have people in for a tour, because I always tailor my tours to the people,
Yeah.
if they seem curious about things or whatever, sometimes I have a little box that I have near my desk, and I say, if the house is on fire, don't let that ever happen. I will save that box before I will save myself. And I'll pull out these interesting little trinkets and things. Yeah. So, there are a lot of neat things that don't always see the light of day, but I do try to rotate, so, 1 year give this the spotlight, 1 year give that the spotlight.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Joey, we're just about out of time. Highlight where people can find out more about the DeWitt County Museum, and once again, when you guys are opening for the season.
Well, we are opening for the season on April 1st. And when we do that, we are open Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 to 5, and 1 to 5 on Sundays through the end of December.
Mhm.
And then the most up-to-date place to probably get information about the museum is our Facebook page. And that can be found under C.H. Moore Homestead and DeWitt County Museum.
Mhm.
Look for the profile picture of Mr. Moore. And there's also our website. That's chmoorehomestead.org. Or we're not open, but there's always someone there. So you can give us a call. And that number is 217-935-6066.
Again, that is Joey Long with the DeWitt County Museum and C.H. Moore Homestead on the WHOW Morning Show.
With SRN News, I'm Rich Thomason in Washington. President Trump isn't giving Iran much time to agree in talks with the U.S. to curb its nuclear program.